Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Facebook Live for the El Paso Mayoral Candidate Forum hosted by the Greater El Paso Chamber of Commerce. And again, we want to hear questions from you at home. Use the hashtag El Paso Decides 2017 and the hashtag NC9 Votes. We want to talk about the downtown arena. I'm going to ask Representative Acosta and the rest of the panelists here this question. Do you support the arena project as well as its proposed location? Why or why not?
Yes, I do support the arena project. In 2012, the voters of El Paso voted for an arena project, and it was overwhelmingly by 70% people voted for it. So in 2013, we started discussions on how we were going to roll out the entire bond. And so in 2014, we brought in a company to have meetings with a community to actually look at 4 different areas of downtown where we could locate the arena. One of those areas, which is what we're looking at right now, actually has come up in some of the other studies. But one of the things about having it in that location is that we may qualify for an additional funding by the state by having a rebate. The state rebates us the 6% that they normally keep from sales tax. They would rebate us if we locate it within 1,000 feet of the convention center and the convention hotel. So we now have a partnership with the hotels in the area. We want to make it a complex, a convention complex. And so with those $25 million that we would get from the state sales tax rebates, we can actually augment the arena and add money to the budget to make it a better arena for everyone in El Paso. So I do support it. It is the area that has the least amount of properties, the least amount of people. It only has 40 people that we need to relocate. So I do support the arena and the location.
Mr. Margo, same question to you.
Yes, I do support the arena. Multiple studies have pointed to that, as well as the most recent, $650,000 or $700,000 study. I've spoken to architects with historical, cultural oversight, and they feel like that is the proper location to go to, that we're not affecting cultural treasures there. Also, I understand all but 1, maybe 2 landowners have all been in favor of it, or all in favor of it. So my concern is the entire process and the delays. The city has sold the bonds. We need to get the job done. The problem is if we wait much longer, we're going to have a convergence of all of the school bond issues and all the contractors, and we're going to have a limited capacity of labor, limited capacity of general contractors, and a limited capacity of surety credit bonds to do the jobs. And what that's going to mean is we're going to have, it's the old law of supply and demand, and we're going to have fewer contractors being able to do it, which means the prices are going to go up. And that is my biggest concern. That we probably have not budgeted properly for this given these delays. So we've got to move ahead. We haven't done any of the signature projects, either this or the Children's Museum.
Mr. Salcedo, same question.
I'm for the arena, but against the location. I think, look, when we're willing to knock down one of the first neighborhoods in El Paso to put an entertainment venue, the fact is that the pictures that they show us, it's disingenuous what's happening. The pictures that they show us are arenas that are out of town. They're absolutely beautiful and remarkable. That cost over $200 million to build, but yet we're going to have the same caliber and quality for $180 million. I think that's disingenuous. I also think, look, tourism. Tourism is a $6 billion industry in the state of Texas. We only take 2% of it because we don't champion our heritage. Ladies and gentlemen, we are from the world famous West Texas town of El Paso. It's time to stop benchmarking ourselves with what's San Antonio doing? What's Oklahoma City doing? What's Nashville doing? Who cares? Why don't we stay true to ourselves and stop selling our identity down the river? Again, I'm against the do not get the location, but I am for the arena. And I'm also very concerned that for the price tag that we have, for whatever we're going to get, it's not going to be world class. None of the signature projects are going to be world class. We're already seeing that all of them are under budget, or actually don't have enough in the budget. Right? We're trying to issue additional certificates of obligation for these quality of life projects. Again, when we voted for world-class, remarkable projects, and that is not what we're getting.
All right, thank you. Our next question has to do with ethics. The mayor and 4 city reps are under investigation by the Texas Rangers for possibly violating the Texas Open Meetings Act with regards to a rolling quorum. The meeting at the mayor's office on a day when City Hall was closed is now the center of that investigation. How should they have handled this meeting differently, and should the 5 had known better? We'll start with you, Representative Acosta.
It's not fair. Well, first of all, when we take an oath of office, we take an oath of office to uphold all the laws of the Constitution of the United States, of the state, and of our local community. And so we all get ethics training. That's something that should not have happened, something that should have been stopped by one of them saying, there's 5 of us here, or one of them going in and out. That should not have happened. One of the things that I want to do is I want to strengthen our ethics ordinance to make sure that we incorporate sanctions against elected officials that violate state law, that violate our local laws. That's something that we don't have currently in the ethics ordinance. I did champion a few years ago, and I think with some of the community members here, we championed adding to the ordinance, amending the ordinance to make sure that all employees got ethics training every other year. We didn't touch on elected officials at that time, but I think elected officials probably need to be taught every single year so that this doesn't happen again. But I certainly believe that we need to have sanctions in there for those elected officials that may violate the law, whether intentionally or non-intentionally, because ignorance of the law doesn't mean that you didn't break it. So that's what I'm proposing, is to strengthen our ethics ordinance and impose sanctions against those elected officials that may violate the ethics ordinance or state law.
Thank you, Representative Acosta. Mr. Margot, as mayor, how would you have handled that situation differently, and should the 5 have known better?
We don't need more ethics training per se. We don't need more training on open meetings. They all went through it. I went through it at the state level, and I went through it at EPISD. Yes, they should have known better. But the bottom line is, we give great lip service to transparency, but then we decide things off the record or in closed session or something like that. And it's ironic, we never had those issues with all of the problems at EPISD, with the FBI investigation, with everything going on. When we did that turnaround, we had no issues related to transparency whatsoever. So it needs to be discussed in open session, it needs to be voted on in open session, and only the personnel items or certain contractual things that must be discussed in closed session should be handled that way. So, people know better. It's just a matter of the light of day shining on everyone all the time.
Mr. Salcedo.
So, as a state official as well, we do open meetings training until we're blue in the face, right? So what happened was a very big deal. But what ended up happening was 68 days after this vote was taken, at a threat of a recall, you had a city representative that quickly called all these meetings, and that's why all of this happened in haste, right, to protect their political career. That's what people are tired of. These are the politicians that we have in El Paso, always looking out for themselves. And look, that's why 9 out of 10 of us don't vote. That's why only 6% of the population votes. In this election, probably only 35,000 people are going to vote, because people are tired of this. This is exactly why there's apathy here in El Paso. And because we are asleep at the wheel, this is the exact same reason why the city of El Paso is one of the largest major cities in the United States with the highest level of bond indebtedness. Ladies and gentlemen, we're broke. We're going broke. And we keep spending, but we're all asleep at the wheel. We need a reawakening. We need to wake up. And I'm really hoping that what happened with this Open Meetings Act violation is a wake-up call to all the citizens of El Paso that your vote matters.
All right, thank you. To our next question. Do you understand and can you explain your thoughts on the role of the mayor in a city manager form of government? Mr. Margot, we'll begin with you.
Well, I have the exact wording for the mayor in the city charter, which basically says the mayor is the head of city government, to preside over council, has the power to propose legislation. He represents the city, he breaks tie votes, he can do a veto, and he can set up a special session and does an annual state of the city election. I mean, a report. That sounds limiting. I believe in a mayor can be a true, with the city manager and its structure, can be a true ambassador for jobs, and provide great opportunities for this community. I truly believe we're on the cusp of a real renaissance with all that's going on, with all the changes that are occurring in our education systems and the growth there. So the mayor needs to oversee city council. There needs to be leadership. There needs to be, everyone needs to be working in concert and not separately. And there needs to be a proper hierarchy of governance, and the meetings need to be handled accordingly. If they're not going to follow the Roberts rules, then follow the rules that they've got. But people need to be treated appropriately, and there is such a thing as the golden rule.
Representative Acosta, to you.
Thank you. Well, Donald Margar is correct about the city charter, but the city charter also says that the mayor will be the head of intergovernmental relations. And so that's something that's very important, especially in our community, and especially right now that we're dealing with issues that the federal government has brought down to our attention, to our border community. So the mayor also is in charge of making sure that we make sure that we have a good relationship with our sister city of Juarez, Mexico, that we have a good relationship with Las Cruces, that we have a good relationship with Fort Bliss, because that is one of the things that the charter says, that the mayor will also do that. The mayor is also entrusted with bringing information to the community and to the council itself to make sure that they have the same information. That's something that I propose to do. I propose to make sure that all of council has the same information, and I propose that all of the community has the same information by holding town hall meetings throughout El Paso and holding regularly scheduled special city council meetings in the evening so everyone can participate and come and voice their concerns. Because currently you can't do that. You have to sit there most of the day. But if you have those in the evening, then you can come and voice your concerns. If you have town hall meetings throughout El Paso, you can come and voice your concerns. And so that's something that the mayor should champion, and that's something that I will champion as your next mayor.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Salcedo.
I believe the mayor needs to set policy vision, oversight, and really be the voice for the people here in El Paso. I think what's happening right now, we need stronger leaders. We have elected officials right now that are being told what to do, how to do it, by a city attorney and by a city manager. We have a very lazy electorate. And I think it's time that order comes back to city council, to the mayor, and we dictate to staff how to get things done. This is not happening right now, and it's time to change that. I think, look, this mayor, when I get in, we're going to listen to the voice of the people, not just the select few, not just the special interest. We need a cultural buy-in. What good is having a very strong downtown if you have other districts of town that are suffering? It's time to get people on the same page here in El Paso, and that's exactly what we're going to do. This mayor needs to lead, and I'll tell you what, I'm tired of border policy being dictated everywhere else except here in the border. This next mayor needs to lead. We need to articulate what our border policy should be. Let people know that 18,000 people are crossing our bridges daily, $72 billion worth of trade. We need to repurpose our bridges. We need to do capital improvement projects on our bridges. This is not happening. That's what the mayor needs to do. And I believe that I'm the man to get it done, because not only am I bilingual and bicultural, I understand what's happening here.
All right, our next question. Where do you see the largest shortfall of city services today, and what would you do to change it? We'll start with you, Representative Acosta.
Well, one of the shortfalls that I see as I'm walking and talking to individuals, and I think the biggest concern that they have is their streets. And so we need to have a plan to go in there and do the whole neighborhood at once, instead of doing piecemeal streets here and there, which is something that was left over from the previous administration. I would like to see our neighborhoods all at once, and obviously in different parts of El Paso, but the whole neighborhood have their streets either reconstructed and resurfaced, but at the same time. That is one of the shortfalls that we have. Obviously there's other shortfalls in El Paso, but streets are very important to our community, and I hear it every single day. I get calls every single day, and I think that's one of the areas that we need to focus on, is make sure that our infrastructure is working, that it's working properly. We need to make sure that people can get to work back home, that we had connectivity to the main thoroughfares, like the state highways, like Montana and Dyer and the interstate. And so that's one of the things that I would like to see, is make sure that our neighborhoods are taken care of all at once.
All right, thank you. Mr. Margo, same question.
Well, we do not have a real user-friendly city. We don't have it. It's not easy from the permitting process. It's not easy when you're only open 4 days a week. That's a problem. The way contracts are let from a construction standpoint, there's too much of a timely delay when contractors come in and they present their bids with their bid bonds. They historically must wait sometimes months, and they tie up their bonding line because the city hasn't made a decision. We need to move forward. That is a structural governance issue, and then you hold the city manager accountable for making sure that the departments are performing at the level they need to. And you discuss that at every council meeting, any projects that haven't been. We don't even see where we are on the construction projects each meeting. At EPISD, we made sure that every meeting agenda had something that was there, so we understood as a public and as a board of managers where the project was in the entire timeline, so we would know what's working and what's not working. We need to really improve it. I've recruited some industry here, been a part of a team that recruited industry here, and sometimes they said, you know, had I known you were as tough to do business with as I've seen, I'm not sure I would do it. So we've got to work on that, but that's a process and that's a people.
All right, Mr. Salcedo, what do you see as the largest shortfall of city services today, and what would you do to change it?
Well, I don't know necessarily if it's a shortfall other than money being spent without any true direction. We spent $112 million in an infrastructure project for the streets. Our streets are still a mess. Potholes, it damages your car, these potholes. It's an issue. And look, you want to talk about quality of life. How about quality of life walking out your front door and just trying to drive to work like a normal person without getting agitated because the street is the way that it is? It's time to fix that. It's time to understand, where is the money going? Can we get an independent audit of the city of where the money is and find the gross inefficiencies in our government? We are run by, I'm so happy we're here at the Greater Chamber of Commerce and there's business people here. I ask this question: how many of you that are business owners would hire anyone on council to work for your business? Second question is, what would they do? But yet we hire them to look over almost $800 million in budget with zero business acumen. Enough is enough. The people are frustrated by this.
All right, thank you. Our final question in the City Council portion of the questions: in what areas, if any, do you think collaboration with the county would be beneficial to the residents of the city of El Paso? We'll start with you, Mr. Marco.
A couple areas. I've spoken with the county judge about where we can do shared services. That's a top of mind awareness for her. We could, in our police academies and sheriff's academies, they could be combined. Years ago, I served on the City-County Board of Health. We don't have a combined City-County Board of Health. It's separate. We don't have the resources to not work collaboratively with other entities that can provide the same sorts of services. For instance, on the police and the sheriffs, have the sheriff, maybe the sheriff's department focus more on the ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdictions of the county, and have the police more focused on just within the county, making sure that the right hand and the left hand do know what they're doing, and we work together accordingly. I think there are probably other areas that we can look at from a shared services standpoint, and my understanding in my conversations with our county judge is that she's very much attuned to that and in favor of that.
Mr. Salcedo?
So several months ago, I did a ride-along with our police department, and it was an amazing experience. I got to see how our police cars are falling apart. I got to see how in the first 2 hours of the ride-along, we had to take the car into the shop because the fuses burnt out. But what was most interesting was we were out by Cielo Vista, okay? And they got a call from the annex out on Montana. And they said, hey, we need you to drive over here to pull a prisoner out, rebook him, and put him back in, since it was a city of El Paso arrest and not a county arrest. There's sheriffs over there. They could have easily done that. However, the bureaucracy is so big here in our levels of government, we had to drive all the way to the annex. The police officer got down, and then he came back out and said, oh, the guy went to lunch. Then we had to go back to Cielo Vista. These are the issues of the inefficiencies of government and city not talking to each other. Because again, it's egos. Who's doing more? Who's doing a better job? You see it in our school districts. YISD passes almost $400 million bond. Oh, not to be outdone by EPISD. That's what it is. There's no unison here in the city of El Paso. This next mayor needs to bring the people together. That's what the people want, and we'll fix that.
All right, Ms. Acosta, same question.
Thank you. There's 3 areas that I can see that we could share services. One is the police academies. I think that's something that we used to have, that used to work, and for whatever reason it was done away with, but it was actually working, and I think we need to bring it back. Number 2, I think we need to also focus on sharing our parks. The county is not really that well versed in doing parks. I think the city is. I think if we share our resources, we could have more parks in El Paso for the entire community. The third one is transit. The county has a rural transit authority that's very limited. I think we need to share transit to make sure that we can flow people. People can move around our city and our county. That would bring in more people into our community, into our city, and it would also allow people to go out into the county, whether they're working, whether they want to go see some cultural events in San Elizario. But that's one of the areas that I think something that we need to share is our transit resources, to make sure that it's available to everyone in the entire county, not just the city, but the entire county.
Okay, let's move on to our next section of questions having to deal with the budget. Our next question, what experience do you have working on large projects? Specifically, what steps, measures have you taken to ensure that projects are completed well within the designated financial resources and time frame and are designed to be sustainable? Representative Acosta, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much. Well, one of the areas that I worked in as a public servant was public works, and one of my jobs was actually to monitor capital projects. And so I had many projects that I had to deal with, and I had to make sure that they were on time and they were on budget and they were being funded by the right sources. So one of those was the Cotton Street overpass. Another one was the landfill in Clint. There were many projects that we followed. We made sure that they were being worked on specifically, that we had the money allocated, that we had that the project was going on time and on schedule. As your elected official, I have also monitored the projects that are being done in my district and made sure that they are on time and on budget. And when there's delays, I ask, why are these the delays? We now have a system that we now have some of these posted online where you can go and see the status of each project, how much each project costs, and where it stands, whether it's in design and construction, what phase is it in and how much has been spent on that project. So I have experience first, on-hands project, multi-million-dollar projects, and as an elected official on many different projects, making sure that they're on time and on budget.
Mr. Margot.
Well, I saw the operations as a CEO for almost 40 years. We had to make sure we had everything was in line there. At the state, I worked on appropriations, as I've stated earlier, where we had to oversee multi-billion-dollar budgets, and the agencies came and reported to us on what had transpired. But the most interesting thing I thought, was at EPISD, where we'd have issues. It's not always construction. It could be like IT. We had issues on our IT, significant issues on our IT program over at EPISD, and we had to have ongoing reports and measurements at every single staff, at every single Board of Managers meeting, so that everyone, it was top of mind awareness. I said, one of the things that frustrates me as I look at city councils and their agenda is you don't really get an update that the public needs on an ongoing basis. So when people say, well, I need to know where we are on these projects, on the bond projects, whatever, you have to go online and figure it out. To me, they ought to be reporting at every meeting what the status is to date. And if there are problems, to have those reported, and so that everyone knows, not just council, mayor and council, but the public at large. That saves a lot of grief, a lot of concerns, and you move forward. It also has a way of expediting. I mean, the joke around here is we can build a ballpark faster than we can build Santa Central Plaza. So it's ridiculous. We need to move ahead, and everything that's not all construction projects. They could be IT or any of the other projects that would be in there. But we need accountability.
All right, Mr. Salcedo, same question.
As an accountant, I'm around a lot of budgets. The biggest budget was obviously working for one of our publicly traded companies, and that was a great experience. I've been involved in many nonprofits, and I've been around a lot of budgets. But most importantly, the budget that is most important is the one of the private sector, the one for my family business. You know, I think what's important is that you have to understand that as a business person, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's sink or swim. That's what's important. So I discount the value of governmental budgeting in the context of it's other people's money. It's your money. It's the taxpayers' money. It's okay. But when you bring in the attitude of, listen, it's a family business. It's a business like the vast majority of us are paying for taxes. It's something we need to take very seriously, because it's not easy, or it shouldn't be easy, to be raising your taxes, and taxes keep going up. Taxes keep going up. There's budgetary shortfalls. Don't worry. Your taxes are going up. It seems to be the solution for everything. I'm tired of that. We're going to hold the line on taxes.
Okay, our next question regarding the budget. The downtown multi-purpose arena is expected to have a budget shortfall and will likely require city action to cover the gaps. What plan of action will you implement to address this difficult financial situation? Mr. Margot.
Well, we had alluded to that earlier. It's expected that it would be under budget, and it's being compounded by the fact that there are multiple delays, and we're heading into 5 years, and nothing's been done. You got to start with what are the priorities, and where can you allocate, and where can you cut? And that's one of my concerns as all of these bonds in our community come together and fruition. The costs are going up. The cost for labor, the cost of the contractors, everything's going up. Where you start, you would have to call your department heads together under the auspices of the city manager and state, we have a shortfall of X. Where are you going to find the money? And have them provide council, mayor and council, with their suggestions on where to cut. That's where it starts. I'm not a believer in going across the board 10% or across the board 12% or whatever, or 5%. I don't believe that. I believe they ought to come up and tell you why something should be done. I do know that there's excess there. There always is in any organization. You just have to look for it and seek it out. There are productivity areas where they're not performing at the level they should. So determine where it is, but you put that the onus of that analysis on the city manager and his department heads to come up with their solution for that project, and not, especially given the caveat that there is not to be a tax increase.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Mr. Salcedo.
I think, look, with the arena, we need to start talking about the public-private partnership and find someone that wants to help us make it what it needs to be and be world-class. But the question is, you need to ask, what is the use of the arena? Right? Who's going to use it? Who's going to benefit from it? And we need to have these individuals pony up and make it remarkable. Because look, if not, here's the question. Do we build what we get for $180 million? And then what are we stuck with? We just start having this conversation. It's a difficult conversation. It's an uncomfortable conversation. But as it stands right now, we are not getting what the voters voted for. And we need to, again, as the mayor, as the leaders of the city, we need to go out shopping. And we need to find the individuals that can help us finish this and do it right.
Representative Acosta.
Thank you so much. Well, I think I already alluded to the fact that if we build it in the space that the area that we have designated, that we are eligible to receive $25 million in state sales tax rebates from the state. That will augment the budget. That will give it another $25 million. So that won't be 180, but it'll be 180 plus 25 million. In addition to that, you can always get additional funding, and this is an annual funding source, by having naming rights of the arena, by selling the suites in the arena, by selling the names within the suites. You know, there are different ways and different financing mechanisms that you can use to augment the cost of the arena, and this will be money that will be coming in on an annual basis, not only to pay off the debt, but also to help us with the operation of the facility. So there are many ways to do it, and I think one of those is, first of all, you know, we need to sell the naming rights of that arena. We need to sell the suites of that arena and make sure that we have every every available opportunity to sell a naming right and to have your name out there on any wall, that is something that's a benefit to El Paso. It's something that you buy into the arena, and something that will generate additional funding for the arena itself.
Will any of you three support the raising of taxes to finish this project?
No, you don't need to do that.
Okay. We have our first Facebook Live question. It's coming from David N. He wants to know, how will the candidates use the Veterans Affairs Advisory Committee more effectively? Mr. Salcedo, we'll start with you.
Well, by actually listening to them. That's for sure. We have committees, we have groups all over the place, all over the city of El Paso until we're blue in the face, but we don't listen to the citizens. It's time to listen to them. Look, we've been doing a lot of forums now. We've gone all over town, and I particularly enjoy listening to the veterans because it's a very frustrated group of people. They're upset that they're not listened to, and I think that's what's important. I think we need to start asking the question, what do our citizens want? Not what am I going to tell you what you're going to do. What do you want from your government, and how can we listen? And look, one of the things that I've worked on through the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is that we're one of the top certifying entities for veteran-owned businesses. So we're putting our veterans to work. Our veterans aren't asking for a lot. They just want a quality of life. You know, they probably want to be left alone, low taxes, and if given the opportunity, let's give them an opportunity to get a job in a veteran-owned business. That's what we've been doing. That's what I've encountered. But more so, they just want to be heard and listened to.
The veteran community is critical to El Paso. And I think we have a very good relationship with Fort Bliss. In the past, we've had mayors who've never even set foot on Fort Bliss. And it is absolutely critical that we maintain this relationship. I would want to know, first of all, what are the issues from the Veterans Affairs Committee that they're not seeing addressed? And what would they like to see addressed? And what are we capable of addressing? What can we do? There are, with a lot of the veterans areas, there's a lot of things tied to the VA and healthcare, not just the veterans-owned businesses and other things. There are job issues here related to spouses, as I've alluded to before, as well as the retirees coming out. Finest men and women I've ever met in my entire life were the 8 years I served as civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army. But it is critical we recognize and remember and deal with our veterans community appropriately. So without knowing exactly what the specifics are that they're not seeing addressed, that would be the starting point.
Representative Acosta.
One of the things that I championed for veterans was having a Veterans Advisory Committee that is made up of nothing but veterans that sit on that board. One of the things that they brought up was transportation. So we are now in our second 6 months of providing free transportation to veterans. They do have to apply for it and they do have to qualify, but they have free veterans bus passes so they can use it 24/7 to get to and from school, to and from work, and I think that's one of the first things that they came up with. The second one was to have a connection with the county of El Paso, who has a Veterans Affairs also commission, and join together and create a website, and we now have it on the city website, of all the veteran services that are available to any veteran in El Paso. And so we also have hired a liaison, a military liaison that is a veteran, that also is supposed to keep in touch with the veteran people that are retiring from the military, and I think that's working. And I do want to say that I have a volunteer with me, Mr. Kenneth Bell, who is military, who is retired by choice in El Paso, and who is going to UTEP right now, and is something that we champion, is to make sure that he gets the services that he so much deserves, because he fought for this country, and this is why we have freedom in the United States. Thank you, Kenneth.
Thank you. Okay, we have less than 10 minutes left. I'm going to ask each of you an individual question, then we'll take one more question from Facebook Live and wrap this up. I want to start with Mr. Salcedo. You have said you are the anti-established candidate. Tomorrow, you are going to Dallas to fundraise for your position as mayor at the Dallas Petroleum Club. Now, the Dallas Petroleum Club, according to their website, has evolved from a fraternity of prominent oil men into the finest private club in the country. Its members include oil and gas executives. You've said of Mr. Margo that he has received donations from some of the wealthiest zip codes in El Paso. How is that anti-establishment?
So Mr. Marcos Ronquillo will be hosting a fundraiser for us in Dallas. He's a champion of Hispanic issues, well known across the country. And the fact is that when I win, I will be the youngest Hispanic mayor in the country. And I'm going to bring awareness to our city. And also, I haven't even won yet, and I'm already bringing awareness to the city of El Paso in Dallas. What the people that are going to go there are Hispanic leaders, are people that are genuinely interested in the Hispanic community, and they want better Hispanic leaders. El Paso is an opportunity for us. This is where we've been missing the mark. El Paso should lead. I've been saying this since day one. I'm tired of us, again, accepting whatever legislation is coming out of DC and even Mexico City. It's time for us to lead. I'm out here advocating for our city. And that's why I'm going to Dallas. And I'll go wherever else to keep on talking about El Paso. I'm very proud of my work here in El Paso. And on the State Board of Nursing, when I go, I always introduce myself the same way. And it always makes people laugh. But I always say it the same way. I'm David Salcedo from the world famous West Texas town of El Paso. Every single time I say that. I have great pride for my city. And I will do that as your mayor. And I will be the biggest advocate for the city of El Paso we've ever seen.
But Dallas is big money. So if you say that Mr. Margo is getting money from some of the richest zip codes here in El Paso, how is that different from you getting money from a club predominantly of people from oil and other big money?
Well, we'll see how much money we raise, first of all. So let's take a look. But hey, look, we need to compete. And this is an election that I think a lot of people have a lot of eyes on us here in El Paso. And the fact that I'm actually going to be in Dallas, again, further proves the point that I am championing the city of El Paso. And people want to listen to what El Paso has to say, because this is a critical moment for our city. I've said it. These next 4 years will dictate the next 40 years.
I wish you luck tomorrow. Mr. Margo, the last time you held office, you were a Republican in a city of mostly Democrats, and although El Paso is not technically a sanctuary city, many city and county leaders want to protect the rights of undocumented immigrants. If you were mayor of El Paso, what would you do for undocumented immigrants?
I don't know that the mayor is responsible for anything related to undocumented immigrants. Define sanctuary city for me.
A sanctuary city is a city that does not want to cooperate with ICE or anyone who would have to have immigrants deported. So primarily, you would not be working with ICE or anyone who would want to detain or deport people who are captured by police or the sheriff's department.
And Sheriff Wiles and Chief Allen have told me we're not a sanctuary city.
We're not.
So to me, it's a moot point. The bill, Senate Bill 4, which is in the House right now, I don't think will even come out of the House in Austin in the same form. I don't really think it's an issue, but if we have to fight issues related to immigration or our community at large, that falls under the purview of our Congressman O'Rourke, Congressman Hurd, and Senator Cornyn and others on a federal level. But I will advocate on behalf of our community at any time that it is required, at any place. You know, when I ran for office as a state rep, I always said I was an El Pasoan before I was ever a Republican. And I think that was exemplified by the fact that when I did run for re-election, irrespective of the outcome in 2012, I was supported by 3 of my Democratic colleagues in my race. So I think I have a track record of building a team, of working together and benefiting all of this community to the extent I'm able to. And I think one of the positives of being a mayor was similar to what we had at the Board of Managers is we were at large. Our concern was not definitely a respective district. Our concern was all of El Paso and all of EPISD. And the mayor is the only one who represents all of El Paso.
Our current mayor has the idea that El Paso is Juarez and Juarez is El Paso. Will you share that same sentiment if you're mayor?
Oh, yeah, for over 400 years we are one MSMA or SMSA, and it's absolutely critical. And so we, and also the tie-in as the Borderplex Alliance tries between Las Cruces and El Paso and Juarez. We are one economic entity. We represent ourselves by the number of manufacturing jobs we have reflected on both sides of the river, and our entire region as a whole, which is the largest bilingual workforce in the world, certainly on the border. So we have many selling points for what we have, and it's got to be tied. And our economy here is still tied to the maquilas in Juarez. So it is critical that we all work together. It's critical that we have no problems with NAFTA, because our economy is so tied to what we do in Mexico. And I think we can continue to build on it. I don't see that deteriorating. I see it coming back up. I was concerned about the devaluation of the peso. It seems to have come back, because that's precluding goods, persons from Juarez to come over and buy our goods and services, and based on that devaluation, and it's starting to pick up, which helps us in our sales tax, irrespective of the fact that they can get some of that back.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Margo. Representative Acosta, according to a report by the El Paso Times, the city upped your annual pension to $90,000 after you withdrew an Equal Employment Opportunity Commission complaint. The report went on to say the city boosted your salary by more than $1,900 for 30 days to get you to that $90,000 annual pension. You said you want to find efficiencies and savings within the city. What do you say to those who feel this seems to contradict that?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you asked that. First of all, this happened about 13 years ago, and it was under a strong mayor form of government. And I had been working for the city for about 30 years, and I had been a public servant, and I had done a lot of good things for El Paso. I'm the one that actually introduced citizen collection stations here in El Paso. I was recognized by the governor of the state of Texas for having the first public-private partnership in recycling in the entire state. And so it was something that I was in a group of departments that were all male. And when I started researching, I realized that I was the one that was earning the least, even though I had the most education and I had the most tenure there. And so when I asked for equality, what happened was I got a lot of harassment. And having all of this, and I didn't know what to do, so I went to EEOC and I said, tell me if I'm going crazy, here's all my documentation. And what they said was, they have created a hostile work environment for you. You have the right to sue the city. I did not want to sue the city. That was the last thing that I ever wanted to do. But I think if you put yourself in a situation where you work for someone for 30 years and they simply are making it difficult for you to work, then yes, I did file an EEOC complaint. And then they came back and they said, okay, we'll give you the $1,900, but retire. And so that's what I did. I went ahead and I retired, but for 30 years, I put 6% of my salary into that pension. And so I think that that's something that should never happen to anyone, and no one should ever be afraid to speak up and to say, you know, these are my rights and this is what I deserve and what I should get.
Thank you for that. Our final question comes from Facebook Live. It is from Hector L. What is your stance on the border wall? We'll start with you, Mr. Salcedo.
I think the border wall needs to be better defined as it is right now. I stand against it, and I've also said that if the border wall is coming here to the city of El Paso, then we need to work on building a bigger door. We need to understand that our commerce and our trade is directly tied to Juarez. I've gone to Juarez multiple times during this campaign, and I've talked about the relationship that we have with them. The fact is that our ports of entry are an absolute disgrace and an embarrassment for the largest international city in the world. We have ports of entry that look the way they do. At least when you travel into Juarez, there's a welcome of bienvenidos, ¿cómo estás?, etc. When you come into El Paso, there's nothing. So look, this is something we need to look at. We need to repurpose our bridges. We don't need new bridges. We need to repurpose them. We need to align industry with our bridges. We need a dignified pedestrian crossing. If tourism is what it should be in El Paso and Juarez, we need a better way to cross people back and forth on the border. And again, this is the lack of leadership. This is the lack of being able to articulate what the border is. I think right now it's just rhetoric. People talk about the border, but there's no absolutes. Then let El Paso be that absolute definition of what the border should be, and we should lead.
Mr. Margo, your thoughts on the border wall?
Well, I don't like the nomenclature wall. I prefer fence, if we're going to talk about it. Most of the fence is done already here in El Paso. I don't see a lot of addition anywhere else. We do need to control our borders. But it's kind of interesting. I'll give you two stories. One, when I would go down to Chihuahuita in their neighborhood association, they actually call it their freedom fence because it precludes riffraff from coming across and stealing, that they said, their Christmas ornaments, their lights, and they can sit out at night. Several of them told me that they almost were afraid to admit it, but when the wind blows through it, it's kind of like a chime, and they're happy for that. And they like the protection that it provides. When Senator Rodriguez and I were together when I was in the House, and the two of us flew with DPS up and down our border here. And the only area we saw where there was any movement of illegals was in the Santa Teresa area. We've got pretty much where we are now. And also the majority of the state of Texas, over 90% of it is private land. You're not going to, and plus of the geographic limitations and terrain, et cetera. I don't think you're going to see what may be articulated in the media or by pundits across Texas. So we do need to control our borders, but I do not see any more around here, and I wish we would call it a fence, because to me a wall sounds like Berlin.
Thank you, folks. Just so you know, we have about 5 more minutes. We're going to let Representative Acosta answer this question. Then we're going to have a final closing question, so we'll have about 5 more minutes left. Representative Acosta, your thoughts on the border wall?
Well, I don't think it's a wall that we need. We already have a fence, which is a wall. I think one of the things that I put on the federal legislative agenda this past year is that we create a coalition of all the border mayors along Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, and California, and send the same message to President Trump to say this affects our communities. It affects our communities negatively, and it's not something that we need. We rely on trade with Mexico, not just the city of El Paso, but the entire state of Texas. And I think by joining forces together with other cities and sending the same message, hopefully the president will understand that we don't want this, and we certainly don't want a tax on imports, because it's going to affect us all negatively. We rely on trade with Mexico. We rely on the trade with Juarez. We commute back and forth, and I don't think it's something that we need, and we need to join forces. And last city council meeting, we did send a resolution to President Trump saying we do not want the border wall. It's going to affect us negatively, and I stand on that position.
Okay. What is your mid to long-term vision for the city? Or, stated another way, how will the city look 4 years after your first term? We'll start with you, Mr. Salcedo.
I think you're going to see a lot more small businesses find exponential success. The city of El Paso will become a competitive advantage to the businesses that are here. We're going to level the playing field on incentives and really do an emphasis on locally owned businesses. This is what happens in the city of El Paso. We import employment, and the fruits of that labor get exported. We're still only home to 2 publicly traded companies, one of which is a utility that's about to raise your rates. And the fact is that, again, we are not competitive. We need to leverage our schools, research and development, innovation, identify and finally get the aerospace industry, the defense industry going, finally get the filmmaking industry going here. It's a huge business, but we're not talking about it because we're fixated on other things. We're fixated on nonsense and the dysfunction of City Hall. I want the city of El Paso to be prosperous. I want us to have prosperity for everyone, not just the few. Every single person in El Paso, again, we are descendants of pioneers and trailblazers. This is in our DNA. It's time to champion the people again, and I want all of us to find prosperity.
Mr. Margot.
Well, I've said it before that I think the mayor should be an ambassador for jobs and the economic development, but I also know that the economic viability of a community is solely predicated on the education of its workforce. We've got to work collectively and together with our school districts and our higher education and those things. We will not have the jobs unless we have the education component. So it used to be a debate on a chicken or an egg. It's not. If we don't have the education, we're not going to attract the jobs. So those things have to go forth. We also need a user-friendly city. I get so many emails from people talking about their potholes and their sidewalks and everything else. People want to know that the basic services that they're paying taxes for are being fulfilled. And they want a user-friendly city that they call, they get a response. And not delays and not procrastination or anything else like that. They don't need the bureaucracy. We need to move forward, and my hope would be that at the end of the 4 years, we have a functioning city that works on all cylinders, that is providing the services that our taxpayers are paying for, and at the same time we have an education component allowing us to attract the jobs and the investment we need for this community. We'll have the expansion. Hopefully by then we would have the dental school. We've got the expansion of the other building now at Texas Tech. We've got the expansion going on at UTEP and New Mexico State, and all that we're doing. So it's there, we're on the cusp, but we need leadership to do it.
All right, thank you, sir. And Representative Acosta, how would the city look different if you were elected mayor 4 years after your term?
In the next 4 years, the first thing that we're going to see is we're going to see more streets being improved than you've never seen before, because we're going to change the methodology that is being done right now versus piecemeal into fixing the entire neighborhood streets. That's number one. Number two, we're still a destination. We are a destination city. So we make sure that we have those venues that people will go to, such as Top Golf. We want to bring in the Grand Wolf Lodge. We want to bring in the main event. We want to bring iFly. Those are attractions that people will flock to El Paso and come from other parts of the region and maybe other parts of other states and other parts of Chihuahua to actually visit our city. And that also stimulates our economy, creates jobs, and keeps on creating them because it's here in El Paso. And so that's what I've envisioned in the next 4 years, without ever having to raise taxes, because the more revenue you get from some of these attractions, people stay here, they eat here, they go shopping here, and you know what? That stimulates our economy. And that helps us bring in more jobs, and that helps us bring in more people from other places throughout the Southwest, to make sure that we continue to be a destination, because that's what we are. We are a destination city, and the rest of Texas knows that we're a destination, and the ones that need to realize that we are is all of us here.
All right, Representative Acosta, that concludes our candidate forum. A round of applause for our three candidates: City Rep Emma Acosta, businessman David Salcedo, and former State Rep Dee Margo. Thank you, folks, and thank you for joining us on Facebook Live.
Good idea. Thanks. Is it okay if we pick up where we left off?
Sure.
Dr. Keller, you said that you knew that you shouldn't have let Trey in.
I had an instinct. Something was wrong. The way he looked at me, made me uneasy.
But you were okay with him being friends with your son?
Yes. I didn't want to shut Trey out. I felt badly for him. His family life was very unstable.
So, Trey came to your door. At what time?
It was around 9 o'clock. I put my work away for the night, and he asked where Luke was. He said they were supposed to study. And I said there must be a mix-up because Luke's his father's house in Westport.
Okay. Go on.
Then he asked if he could come in anyway, do his homework, and I said yes. And then I went upstairs to get ready for bed.
So that's when you changed into...
No, I already had my nightgown on, and I'd already started getting ready for bed when he rang the doorbell.
Okay, so you answered the door in your nightgown, and then you went back upstairs.
Yes. I went upstairs for about an hour. It started getting late, so I went back downstairs, and I told Trey. I told him it was time to go home.
So during that time, your son was calling you. Why didn't you pick up?
No, I didn't get the message. I didn't get any messages. When I work sometimes, I don't even look at my phone, and Luke was with his dad.
Right, but you weren't